And abortion access is the law of the land in Ohio.
It is the White House's view that these actions should be condemned.
Every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying.
Republicans need to figure out what they're going to do with the abortion issue. The Congress censures jihadist Rashida Tlaib. That wasn't her, but she will be censured. And also, the mainstream media has no idea what they're talking about in regards to elections. But what else is new? All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go.
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker that is completely and totally and utterly cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Wednesday, on November 8th, the year of our Lord 2023, the day after the consequential, crucial election night of an off year. Republicans did not do super well, and I feel like that needs to be talked about, and it needs to be talked about more immediately than probably calm, collect yourself, use your words. Probably needs to be talked about more than anything right now, especially in the political scope. So last night was election night, a bunch of different places, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky. Where else were there? Virginia, a lot of different places. Republicans did not do great. I do want to hit on the fact that the media covering Republicans not doing great is a lot of cases wrong, but the overall, I guess, recap is, Republicans did not do great. One of the reasons Republicans did not do great is because abortion was kind of the center of the fold when it comes to what was on the ballot in a bunch of those states. In Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court justice there that won in her seat, I'm not even sure. Supreme Court justice there ran specifically on abortion issues. In Virginia, Republicans lost the state house running specifically on abortion issues, but that's a different thing that we'll hit on and we'll talk about later. In Kentucky, the Democratic governor held his seat for the governorship of Kentucky in a deep red state, but ran on the issue of abortion. And in Ohio, they added a constitutional amendment, I think, or something in the Ohio state constitution that allows for abortions. Now, just before we get into the nitty gritty of how Republicans need to handle the abortion issue, and I would imagine that a lot of people are tired of talking about this at this point, but it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be understood that at the end of the day, you have to win elections. Now, I'm sure there's some people in the comment section here that are going to disagree with this, and that is okay. I'm open and willing to have some disagreements. Also, if you want to disagree with my take on this, that is totally fine. I'm not even opposed to bringing it up on the screen. But that being said, it has become evidently clear that the GOP, Republicans in general, need to figure out how to not lose consistently based on the abortion argument and the abortion issue alone. Now, I'll start off this screed, and it's going to be a screed. So this is just one of those days where it's just like, all right, we need to have a come to Jesus moment with conservatives here. I'll start this off by saying, in terms of personal morality, you're going to have a difficult time finding a more conservative person, especially on this particular issue. If there was a perfect world, in my eyes, it would look like the abortion issue is not even a topic. Meaning that, look, hey, if you're going to be engaged in activity that would lead to a child, hopefully you're in a committed relationship and married, and we don't even need to have this discussion because it's not even an issue. And then after that point, then I get to, all right, I think life starts at conception, and anything past that is. I'm trying to avoid using the harsh terms, even though I believe the harsh terms, but for the lack of being able to skirt around it, I think after that you're killing a person. Okay, right? So just so on the onset, that is what I believe personally. It would seem as the elections post Roe v. Wade being a litmus test that a position like mine is not going to win elections. Mine and a bunch of other conservatives, a bunch of the other big mainstream talking heads that I agree with on this issue, that stance is not going to win. And then we have to weigh the options of, okay, is this issue worth losing despite ceding control to all of the other issues that exist? Because remember, this is not the only issue that we have. Two people who have bad ideas on everything else. And the answer that I've come up with is no. If you look at the polling, and we've talked about this a number of times, if you look at the polling throughout America, Republicans, Democrats, Independents are pretty much all in agreement. It's crazy. Just as an issue, take out the actual act itself, take out abortion, and just look at it as a percentage issue, right? Just some innocuous issue that voters are voting on. Republicans, Democrats, Independents are in universal agreement on this, interestingly enough. And that agreement is first trimester, okay, fine. Some people might be uncomfortable with it, but that's okay. You can allow abortions first trimester. Again, I don't agree with that, but that's what the polling would show. Second trimester and third trimester, absolutely not. The polling goes off a cliff. Again, take out the actual act and just look at it as an issue. That's what the polling says. Now, that being said, when abortion is on the docket, when it's on the ballot, Democrats slash, I'll use the terms, even though I hate the terms, pro-choice people have a 1 foot putt, not even a 1 foot putt, a 6-inch putt when it comes to the terminology that they're able to use to convince people of their argument. The words like ban's off our body, an abortion ban is a very, very easy word to use to get people charged up. And as a person who's more probably libertarian oriented in the way that I think about things, the government interceding at any point is usually a bad thing. And so when somebody says and somebody makes the argument, well, the government is going to ban you doing this, I understand how that is something that somebody can believe without really kind of diving into it head first. I get it. So that being said, Republicans and conservatives and pro-lifers as a whole, again, I'm saying this as a person who is as pro-life as humanly possible, but Republicans and conservatives and pro-lifers as a whole need to understand the difficulty that they're up against in convincing people of their side. While Democrats have a 3-inch putt to rally people to the case saying the government is trying to control you, the nuance of the argument, and maybe it's not as nuanced for you in your head, but I guarantee you, for somebody who doesn't agree with you, it's much more nuanced than you might think. That is trying to sink a hole-in-one from 180 yards. It's difficult, is what I'm saying. And so because that this argument is so difficult with people who are such ardently in favor of something that I disagree with wholeheartedly, is it worth losing the rest of the issues and conceding the rest of the issues for something that most Americans agree on from a polling standpoint? I've decided no. No, it's not. Nikki Haley, I think, is the only person that has been saying this sort of thing. But she's been saying that, look, I believe that, I think she says this. I think she says, I believe life starts at conception. However, because that's not where America is, we can't stand firmly on that ground, and we need to win elections in order to be able to pass the more, I don't even want to say harsh, the more stringent policy that a lot of us believe in. And I get that, and I totally understand that. But the key point there is you have to win elections. If you don't win elections, you can't do anything. And as it stands right now, because a lot of more mainstream Republicans are taking the hard line of ban all abortions or limit them to 4 weeks or something like that, which is not where America is, by the way. I'm just, again, trying to take my own personal feelings out of this. Because that is the case, we are losing election after election after election after election. I think this is the 7th time in the post Roe versus Wade era that abortion on the ballot has been won by the pro-abortion faction, because they are so rallied and they're so fired up about it, and because it's such an easy thing to message, and because where a lot of the hardline conservatives are is not where America is. Because of all of those things, we've lost every single time. And so you ask yourself then, is this issue important enough to sacrifice all of the other issues? Because if you lose the election, you lose all of the issues. Like I said, not to repeat myself, I would say no. Again, being as pro-life as a person could possibly be, you have to look at the bigger picture. I heard this on a radio station this morning, actually, talking about this, and I think this is exactly where it needs to go. The abortion argument, in a lot of cases, needs to turn less legislative, less legalistic, and more moral. There are a lot of things that are legal that are immoral that you shouldn't do. And I would argue that a lot of those things don't necessarily reach the line of abortion in terms of seriousness, but that's just the reality. There are a lot of things that are legal that are immoral, and that's fine. But if you're going to try and win support for your side, you have to fight it on a moral ground before you can fight it on a legal ground. Because the legality of it is, or at least the voting populace would tell you, that they are going to go in one direction. And it's easy to charge people with politically charged language. All that being said, there's some interesting components going on with some of these elections. I want to play you this clip from Ohio. And again, I can't reiterate this enough. This type of stuff is disgusting, in my opinion. But I want you to play how excited these people are to enshrine, I guess, or codify in the Ohio Constitution that women can kill babies. Watch this, and then we'll continue the discussion, but check it out.
Abortion is health care. And abortion access is the law of the land in Ohio. Tonight, Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights passed Issue 1 and put Ohioans back in charge of their decisions about pregnancy and abortion. Together, we successfully enshrined the right to reproductive freedom into the Ohio Constitution.
Yeah, it's crazy to me how excited these people are. Like that's a weird thing to be this excited about. Like it's just, I don't know. Personal feelings aside, I think it's weird. Personal feelings included, I think it's sickening. But at the same time, the populace continues to prove over and over again, if you take a super hardline position, it's going to be not successful. Now, okay, here's another component. Here's another component of this that I haven't mentioned this that I feel like, is this comment saying that? I'm not sure if it is, but it's reminded me of something. If Republicans were to be more where the people are, the people of the United States, I honestly and genuinely think there would be less abortions. Most abortions take place, I think it's like 95% of abortions take place within that 6-week barrier that even the most quote unquote aggressive states have been pushing for. And all that's to say is that if conservatives were to win elections by making abortion not such a charged issue, which would kind of crush the turnout on the Democrats' side. Look, Democrats are eager and excited about getting abortion on every single ballot that they can for the next decade. They know it's a winning issue for them, which is crazy. Again, that's crazy, but they're going to do everything they can to put it on the issue. Republicans, in a lot of ways, need to fight on the moral ground of, hey, let's just not do this as a society, even though it is legal. And two, recognize that if the hardline position is taken, they're going to lose, and therefore we're going to lose all of the other issues. But I genuinely think that if conservatives are in power and conservatives can pass more legislation that would incentivize family structures and incentivize traditional values, I think ultimately, even if there was I don't even want to call it a secession or a compromise on the abortion issue, but even if Republicans went to where the majority of Americans are, I think by them being in power and passing legislation that incentivizes family values, there would be less abortions. And if that is the whole goal, I would take that as a win. Ultimately. Because one, you win elections and you can do things when you're in office that obviously you can't when you're not in office. But once you're in office and you can pass incentivizing things that incentivize traditional family values, you will ultimately see less abortions than if you were to lose elections altogether, I think. But I don't know. I want to see if I can get some of these comments. But let me see. Let me see. I want to read. I haven't read. I'm going to read these live, so we'll see if they're. Russell says, I'm pro-life, but Republicans need to change abortion rights and try and pass an abortion bill for up to 12 to 15 weeks. Okay, so this is actually a really fascinating thing. Okay, thanks, Russell. Thanks for the comment. There's a bunch of other people. Okay, there's people that I think are too attached to this emotionally, which again, I am too on a moral level, but I also am trying to stay realistic about the politics of this. 15 weeks. Okay, so Russell says, I'm pro-life. Republicans need to take the abortion rights to 15 weeks. That's what Glenn Youngkin tried to do in Virginia. Now, we'll talk about the Virginia race. Holy cow, we're that far in already. All right, we'll talk about the Virginia race in just a second. But Glenn Youngkin was attempting to push a 15-week limit to abortions in the state of Virginia. Now, all of the things that I was just saying, Republicans taking hardline stances and all that sort of stuff, this is where the politics and the messaging come into play. Because in case math is not the strong suit of people here, which I can't imagine it's not, you might have already figured out that 15 weeks is well past the 3-month cutoff that most Americans already agree to. In other words, 15 weeks from a conservative Republican in Virginia is far more liberal than the average American who gets polled Republican, Democrat, Independent. If Republican, Democrat, Independent all pretty much say, first trimester, fine. Second trimester, third trimester, absolutely not. Because that is what the polling says. Poll after poll after poll after poll. Gallup, AP, Siena College, New York Times, all of these polling organizations come with the same statistics that across the board, Americans are like, first trimester, okay, fine. Second and third, absolutely not. 15 weeks is into the second trimester, in which most Americans say absolutely not. So here's where the messaging comes into for being an uphill, curved 45-foot putt for Republicans as opposed to the 3-inch putt for Democrats. Even though Glenn Youngkin was advocating for a more liberal policy than most of America agrees with, they were still able to hit him on it because the messaging is so simple and so dumbed down that people buy into it. In Virginia, Glenn Youngkin lost, I think, the state house, but we'll talk about it in just a second. But the bottom line is the messaging is so difficult for Republicans on this issue that at least in the meantime, it might be beneficial for Republicans to at least get to where the American population is in terms of the polling so that they can win elections and hopefully in the future on a moral battleground fight back against the culture, which has nothing to do, nothing to do with the legislation, but less to do with the legislation than the legislation. So the legislation can then follow the culture. And if we can do that, maybe Republicans can stop getting their butts handed to them on this issue. Okay. All that being said, geez, there's a bunch of comments flying. This is one of those where I'll probably read some of these comments afterwards. And maybe we'll talk about them more tomorrow. But kind of continuing on this, and I mentioned I'm going to talk about the Virginia election. I think this is fascinating. This is more fascinating from a media standpoint. I want you to watch this short clip from Fox News. So Glenn Youngkin, was running to try and get the state house and the state senate on his side of which it's a whole thing. He was trying to get the state house and the state senate on his side in Virginia, and was not successful. But this is how they were talking about it on Fox News, which I thought was freaking fascinating. The inability for a lot of these people to understand how politics works. Check this out.
In Virginia, that was really a loss for the governor. And he traveled all over that state to all the different districts. They spent a ton of money trying to get the Republicans to win in both of those establishments. But the no abortion ban, I mean, I think that's what the voters said.
They also said, flip the House, keep the Senate, but he lost both. What an epic failure by Governor Youngkin. This is a huge loss for him, who everyone looked at, if not 20.
Yeah. All right. So that you might have been like, why did you play that? What are you getting at? All over conservative media, this is a huge loss and a huge blow to Republicans in Virginia. And just, is this a bellwether for the rest of the country? Just a massive, epic loss of major proportions. Yeah, I don't think it was, honestly. And I go back and forth on whether or not you should use that sort of language to make this is such a big deal in order to galvanize people to get out and vote in the next election. Or you look at it realistically in realistic terms and say, yeah, Democrats already had the state Senate, so they just stayed the same. And yeah, I guess technically Republicans in Virginia lost the House, but they only had the House by 2 seats. So they lost those 2 seats. This isn't like a 30 legislator flip to the other side in one state on both houses. Like, no. One is a miracle that Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia in the first place. Virginia is a purplish state, way more on the blue side than it is on the red side. So the fact that he won as a Republican overall is amazing. And then on top of that, to then say, okay, the purpley, very blue, kind of purpley state of Virginia stayed Democrat majorities in the houses of legislation including flipping 3 seats, 4 seats, whatever it was in the House to flip it to the other party, to call this just a massive blow and a massive loss. I don't know if that's accurate. And I honestly don't know if the language being used is intentional to try and galvanize Republican voters, but it's also just inaccurate. And again, I'm not saying I wanted Democrats to win in the state of Virginia, but at the same time, you got to be realistic about this sort of stuff. And if you're going to call something an epic failure, shouldn't it be an epic failure? Not, yeah, the Dems who already controlled the Senate in an already mostly blue state continued to control the state Senate in that state. That's not shocking. Same thing with the House. Okay, Republicans in a very, very blue state, purpley blue state, had the slimmest of possible majorities, and then they lost that majority. Okay, I wouldn't call that an epic failure of epic proportions. Like it's just, yeah, you lost an election. I didn't want that election to go that way, but it did. And to say that this is just a monumental failure of a guy who's a pretty good candidate for 2028 as a presidential candidate, if he can win re-election in Virginia this next cycle. I don't know if that language is helpful. Anyways, but what else is new? What else is new is wow, moving on entirely to look at this. Yeah, Jody says perfect. Virginia wasn't really a surprise, not that big of a deal. Yeah, what was a surprise is the fact that Glenn Youngkin won the governorship 2 years ago. That's what was a surprise. Also, just FYI, I can confirm, according to Democrat standards, I can confirm that Kentucky is racist. Kentuckians know that I'm kidding, but Daniel Cameron, I think his name is. I think the Attorney General of the state of Kentucky was running for governor as a Republican and lost by a decent amount to a Democrat in Kentucky. But of course, Daniel Cameron happens to be a black guy, and the sitting governor, who's a Democrat, is a white guy. So the party that says, well, the only reason that, I don't know, Hillary Clinton lost was because she's a woman, or, I don't know, name minority figure on the Democrat side. Well, the only reason they lost because they're black. The only reason Kamala Harris has such low approval ratings is because she's a black woman. The same party that said that voted against the against the black guy in Kentucky and put a Democrat white guy in place. Again, of course, this is pretty much entirely kidding in terms of saying Kentucky is racist. I don't actually think that. But it is trying to highlight and point out the fact that a whole identity politics the Democrats play so often is such total and utter BS. Nobody likes Kamala Harris, not because she's a black woman, but because she's an idiot. And people in Kentucky and everywhere continue to prove that day after day after day. I'm very confused at some of these comments in here. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Good, yeah. Stacey Abrams, same. Stacey Abrams only lost because she's a black woman. No, she lost because she's dumb. If you flip it, and the black woman in Georgia was a Republican, and the white guy was a Democrat, and those situations were entirely flipped, I'd be fine, be totally fine. But because she's a Democrat, it's because she's a black woman. Jeez, wow. Spent the whole time talking about that. But I also feel like it was important. I again, I wasn't expecting to talk about the elections all that much, but this is where we are. Yesterday, in other news, entirely flipping, the House voted to censure Rashida Tlaib, who is an anti-Westernist, crazy person. This is not Rashida Tlaib. I know that. People are like, oh, you showed a picture of Ilhan Omar. No, this is Ilhan Omar yelling at Congress. But 22 Democrats voted to censure Rashida Tlaib. The reason being is because she's saying some outlandish, crazy and hates Western civilization, apparently, does not like America, and is voting specifically in Congress for interests that do not support American values. But here's Ilhan Omar yelling at Congress, somewhat incoherently, somewhat comically, somewhat ironically. Watch this.
What is true here is that every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying in the tens of thousands, but will continue to say it is us who are not acknowledging humanity. Rashida will stand strong.
Gentlelady's
and
time
the
has expired.
Palestinian movement will continue for liberation until every single
Gentlelady's time has
Palestinian
expired.
has the right to
Gentleman
live
from
in
Maryland
liberty.
is recognized.
You have to wonder, like you have to wonder if this is a cynical attempt to rally supporters to her side of things, or if she's that blind to the world or intellectually impaired to not see the flaws in what she just said. She said nobody will recognize that Palestinians are dying. Literally everybody is. Every single person who is watching in any detail what's going on in Israel and Gaza are seeing Palestinians dying. And I'll tell you this, nobody likes it. Nobody likes the fact that anybody is dying. Nobody is in support. Maybe you're super vengeful, and given what Hamas did to Israel, I can understand the need for vengeance. But on a cursory level, and the people that are kind of just watching this, nobody wants people to die. So to say that nobody cares is, one, just inaccurate, or nobody's acknowledging it is just flat out inaccurate. And secondly, everyone is acknowledging it, but also everybody with two eyeballs and half a brain understands that the reason Palestinians are dying is because of Hamas. This is not shocking. This is not surprising information. This is information that she should know. And maybe my expectations are too high for somebody as intellectually ungifted as Ilhan Omar. But remember, if Hamas abided by the international rules of war and the Geneva Convention, Palestinian civilians wouldn't be in near the danger that they are in now. Again, I can't believe that this needs to be explained, but if for some reason Ilhan or Rashida or AOC were to see this, by the way, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If they were to see this, I would wonder if that even has crossed their mind of, oh, wait, yeah, maybe even the people that are in support of Israel don't want to see innocent civilians dying. But also, the reason that any innocent civilians are dying, and we can have the discussion on whether or not Gazans who elected Hamas are in fact innocent, but that's a topic for a different time. We talked about that earlier. Maybe it's possible that you can recognize the fact that the reason they're dying is because of Hamas. I don't want to make light about this. I don't necessarily want to joke about this, but it's so obvious, and the argument that they're making is so stupid, it's hard not to make fun of it. But such is politics in the modern age. Yeah, I see people in the comment section that's saying Rashida Tlaib needs to be removed from office. I'm not willing to go that far. I hope her electorate removes her from office. That would be awesome. I think she might struggle in the next election, but we'll see. This is interesting. Most recent comment, so I was able to pull it up. Tlaib is a Palestinian American. If she were American of Palestinian descent, maybe she would be taken seriously. Yeah. That's a good point. She seems like she often prioritizes the Palestinian side of Palestinian American than rather than, well, she hates, I think she's an actual America hater in the sense of I don't think she believes that the culture and values of the West is better than the craziness that goes on in other parts of the world. We'll end with this. I thought Lawrence said, send her to Gaza to go support Hamas. Both of them, yeah. There's a bunch of, the super pro Hamas Congress people. What? We have planes. We can charter. Why don't we just send them there? Hey, we could even say it like we can make it like a not a fun thing, but like a celebratory thing. Is like you're getting an honor. Rashida, Ilhan, thank you so much for your outspoken support of the Palestinian people. We have decided to reward you with an opportunity of a lifetime to go to Gaza, to be able to support and help the people that you so ardently want to support and help. We will be giving you, in celebration of your views and ideas, a one-way ticket to Gaza to help all of the people that you want to help. Such a weird thing when people come to a place, immigrate to a place to find a better life, and then try to make that place like the place that they left. Silly. It's just silly. But that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. I don't know when the other dingy bunker studio will be done. It's mostly a set design thing. Like I can't. It's not really a tech thing. It's. Do I want a plant here? Do I want a lamp? What do I want here? What do I want this thing to look like? But in the meantime, I kind of like this little studio setup we've got going on here in the actual bunker of bunkers. If there was a need for a bunker, this is where I would be. I would be here. We actually are below ground. Maybe that's all the information I'll give you. But yeah. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB pretty much anywhere. Tickets for the Twin Falls show on the 17th in Idaho are going fast. Blackfoot, Idaho. Yeah, you get some. You had a little bit of time. Those aren't selling as well. I don't know if I should share that with you, but yeah, the comedy tour rolls on November 17th in Twin Falls, Idaho, and November 18th in Blackfoot, Idaho. Tomorrow, I will be on campus. UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, with Charlie Kirk at a TPUSA event. I will be next Wednesday, the 15th, in Amarillo, Texas. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, for another TPUSA speechifying. But yeah, should be fun. Gonna hit the road, and then I think we're done traveling for the rest of the year. Not done traveling, but done giving speeches and doing the comedy stuff. But 2024 is going to be a fun year. So if you want to make sure that you catch the comedy tour whenever it comes to your town, follow me on social media, just JOBOB pretty much anywhere. And we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.